Family heirlooms carry more than just monetary value. They hold our history, our memories, and our legacy. My name is Margaret Collins, and at 64, I believed I was passing down more than just jewelry to my son's wife. I was sharing pieces of my heart, until I discovered them in the trash. The day I found my grandmother's pearl necklace and my mother's diamond earrings discarded like worthless trinkets was the day something inside me shattered. But what I chose to discard in return changed everything for all of us. And no one cried harder than Vanessa. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I never imagined I'd be sitting in my sunroom alone at 64, contemplating how decades of family treasures could be so easily dismissed by someone who had pledged to become family. The morning began like any other Tuesday in Elmwood, quiet, with just enough chill in the air to warrant a cardigan as I tended to my hydrangeas. Retirement suited me well enough, though the silence of my colonial-style home sometimes echoed a bit too loudly since Raymond passed 5 years ago. My son Nathan and his wife Vanessa lived just 20 minutes away in Westbrooke Heights, in a house I had helped them purchase with a substantial down payment, nearly half of the retirement fund Raymond and I had built over 40 years of marriage. "It's for family," I had told my financial advisor when he questioned the wisdom of such generosity. What better investment could there be? Nathan had always been my pride, intelligent, handsome, and possessing Raymond's easy charm. When he brought Vanessa home 4 years ago, I tried to embrace her with the same warmth I would have shown a daughter. She was striking, with sleek dark hair and a polished appearance that spoke of careful curation. Her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me, but I dismissed that observation as uncharitable. "Mom, Vanessa works in luxury brand management," Nathan had explained, as if this information should immediately establish common ground between us. "She has incredible taste." "How wonderful," I had replied, smoothing my simple cotton dress, self-consciously. "I'm afraid my taste runs more toward the practical than the luxurious." "Clearly," Vanessa had murmured, her gaze sweeping over my comfortable living room with its well-worn furniture and family photographs. Despite these early tensions, I persisted in my efforts to build a relationship with my daughter-in-law. When they announced their engagement, I brought out the cherry wood box that contained the Collins family jewelry collection. Pieces that had traveled from England with my great-grandmother, survived the Depression with my grandmother, and adorned my mother on the occasions that mattered most in her life. "These will be yours someday," I told Vanessa, opening the box to reveal the pearl necklace with its distinctive gold clasp, the diamond earrings set in platinum that had been restyled in the 1940s, and the sapphire ring that had been on my finger when I said yes to Raymond. Each piece has a story, a piece of our family history. Vanessa had lifted the pearl necklace, examining it with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Vintage," she said, in a tone that didn't indicate whether this was a compliment or criticism. "Very traditional." For their wedding, I suggested she might want to wear something from the collection. "Something borrowed," I said with a smile. Though in truth, I was already considering these pieces as gifts. "Oh, I've already selected my accessories," she replied. "They're being custom-made to match my gown, but thank you for the offer, Margaret." Still, on their 1-year anniversary, I formally presented Vanessa with the pearl necklace. "Welcome to the family," I said, fastening it around her neck. "My grandmother wore this on her wedding day in 1923. Vanessa had thanked me, kissed my cheek, and promptly put the necklace away. I never saw her wear it, but I told myself that pearls weren't practical for her corporate lifestyle or her minimalist aesthetic. Each holiday and birthday that followed, I shared another piece from the collection: the diamond earrings, a delicate gold bracelet, an Art Deco brooch. Each time the scenario repeated: polite thanks, careful storage, and no further mention. Last month, I decided to pass along the sapphire ring, the most valuable piece both sentimentally and financially. When I called to invite them for dinner, Vanessa answered. "Actually, Margaret, we've been meaning to talk to you," she said. "Nathan and I are considering a complete renovation of our master suite. We're thinking of converting that small room you use when you visit into a walk-in closet for my collection. Nathan's designer friend says it would add tremendous value to the property." The small bedroom in question had originally been designated as a nursery, though after 3 years of marriage, Nathan and Vanessa remained focused on their careers. I had decorated it myself when they bought the house, selecting a soft green paint that would work for any future grandchild, adding bookshelves for the volumes I hoped to read to little ones someday. "I see," I said, trying to keep disappointment from my voice. "Well, it's your home. You should make it work for your lifestyle." "Exactly." Vanessa sounded relieved. "We knew you'd understand. So about dinner, could we take a rain check? The contractor is coming tonight to discuss plans." I agreed, of course. What else could I do? Instead, I decided to drop off the sapphire ring with a note explaining its history. Nathan had always admired it on my hand, asking as a child if he could give it to his wife someday. "When the time comes," I had promised. The time had come, whether it felt right or not. I drove to Westbrooke Heights that afternoon, the ring box tucked in my purse along with a card detailing how Raymond had saved for months to purchase it, how he had proposed on the stone bridge in Elmwood Park. As I pulled into their circular driveway, I noticed a large dumpster positioned near the garage. The renovation was clearly already underway. No one answered when I rang the bell, though. Nathan's car was in the driveway. I tried the door and found it unlocked. Not unusual in our community, despite Vanessa's frequent complaints about suburban laxity. I called out as I entered but received no response. The house was oddly quiet, except for muffled voices coming from upstairs. I left the ring box and card on the entryway table and was about to leave when I glanced toward the dumpster outside. Something caught my eye, a flash of familiar wood. Curious, I stepped outside and peered into the container filled with construction debris. There, amidst broken drywall and damaged trim, was my cherrywood jewelry box. The lid was cracked, the velvet lining exposed to the elements. My heart began to race as I moved closer, carefully reaching in to retrieve it. The box was empty, of course. I frantically searched through the surrounding trash, my hands trembling as they closed around the pearl necklace, its clasp bent and several pearls now missing. Nearby lay the diamond earrings, one missing its back, the other partially covered by a paint-stained cloth. Piece by piece, I recovered what I could. The gold bracelet was bent beyond repair, the brooch missing its central stone. Only the sapphire ring remained safe, still in my purse, saved from this casual disposal by mere timing. "Margaret, what are you doing?" I turned to find Vanessa standing behind me, her expression more annoyed than guilty. She wore her trademark cream silk blouse and tailored pants, not a hair out of place despite the renovation chaos. "I found my family jewelry in your trash," I said, my voice barely steady. "The pieces I gave you, the heirlooms." Vanessa sighed, crossing her arms. "We're decluttering before the renovation. Marie Kondoing the whole house. Those old pieces just don't fit our aesthetic. And honestly, they were taking up space in my jewelry cabinet. I needed room for my new collection." "This isn't costume jewelry from a department store," I said, clutching the damaged pearls. "This is my history, my family's history." "It's outdated," she replied with a dismissive wave. Nathan agreed. They should go. No one wears jewelry like that anymore. If they had actual value, we would have sold them, but the appraiser said they're more sentimental than significant. "You had them appraised?" The words stuck in my throat as I tried to process what was happening. Before I could respond, Nathan appeared at the door. "Mom?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What's going on? He looked between us, confusion giving way to understanding as he saw what I held in my hands. Oh, you found the... I was going to talk to you about that. When? I asked, my voice finally breaking. After they were buried. In a landfill? They're just things, Mom, he said in the placating tone he'd developed lately, the one that made me feel simultaneously ancient and childish. We didn't think you'd want them back since you gave them to Vanessa. They're not really her style. Not her style, I repeated, the words hollow. These pearls survived 2 world wars. This brooch was worn by my mother to her college graduation, the first woman in her family to earn a degree. But they're not stylish enough for your closet. Margaret, Vanessa's tone sharpened. You're being dramatic. If they meant that much to you, you should have kept them. In that moment, something crystallized within me. A clarity I hadn't experienced since Raymond's diagnosis 5 years ago. I carefully placed the damaged jewelry back in the broken box and set it on the ground. Then I reached into my purse, removed the sapphire ring box and held it tightly. You're right, I said quietly. I should have kept what mattered to me. I walked past them into the house, moving with purpose toward my purse on the entryway table. I removed the card I'd written and tore it in half, then placed the ring box in my pocket. Mom? Nathan called after me. What are you doing? Making decisions about what matters, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. And what doesn't. I drove home in silence. No radio, no tears. The sapphire ring sat heavy in my pocket, the last intact piece of my family legacy. When I arrived home, I placed it on my finger where it had rested for 40 years of marriage, and I made a phone call I'd been considering for months. Hello, Patrick. It's Margaret Collins. I've made a decision about your offer. Patrick Sullivan was my financial advisor, and 3 months earlier, he had presented me with an opportunity to invest in a small business initiative, a local program helping women entrepreneurs get their start. The required investment was substantial, the remaining half of my retirement fund, the money I'd been holding back in case Nathan and Vanessa needed additional support for their future. That's wonderful news, Margaret, Patrick responded. The program directors will be thrilled. They've already identified 10 promising candidates who need backing. I have one condition, I said, twisting the sapphire ring on my finger. I want to be involved, not just as an investor, but as a mentor. I built a successful accounting practice while raising a child. I have experience to share. I think that can certainly be arranged, Patrick assured me. Should I prepare the paperwork for your full investment amount? I took a deep breath. Yes, the full amount. After hanging up, I sent a brief text to Nathan. We need to talk. Come alone tomorrow. That night, I slept better than I had in months, perhaps years. The decision felt right. A reclamation of purpose I'd gradually surrendered since retirement, since Raymond's death, since I'd made Nathan and Vanessa's lives my primary focus. Nathan arrived the next morning looking apprehensive. He'd brought coffee from my favorite shop, a peace offering. Mom, about yesterday. Sit down, Nathan, I interrupted, accepting the coffee but moving directly to the dining room table, where I'd arranged several folders. We need to discuss some financial matters. If this is about the jewelry, I'm sorry. We should have asked you first before throwing it away. Vanessa didn't realize how much it meant to you. This isn't about the jewelry, I said, though in some ways it was about exactly that. About value, about worth, about what we choose to preserve and what we discard. This is about the house. The house? His brow furrowed. Our house? What about it? I opened the first folder, revealing the original mortgage documents. When you and Vanessa purchased your home, I provided 50% of the down payment. $275,000. There was never any formal loan agreement because I considered it a gift. However, I've reconsidered that position. Nathan's confusion gave way to alarm. What do you mean, reconsidered? I've invested the remainder of my retirement fund in a new venture, I explained, opening the second folder to show him the paperwork I'd signed that morning. As a result, I'll need to reclaim my investment in your home. Reclaim? Nathan's voice rose. Mom, that was a gift. We've been living there for 3 years. We've built our lives around that house. We're in the middle of renovations. Yes, converting my would-be grandchild's room into additional closet space. I'm aware. I kept my voice even, though my heart was racing. I'm not asking for immediate repayment. I've had papers drawn up converting the gift to a loan with reasonable terms, 5 years at 3% interest. This is insane. Nathan stood, pacing the dining room. We can't afford to suddenly pay back $275,000 over 5 years. Why? Are you doing this? I looked at my son, truly looked at him, and saw not just the man he had become, but the boy he had been. The child who had once cried when a bird hit our window, who had saved his allowance to buy Raymond a birthday gift, who had held my hand at the funeral and promised he would always be there for me. Because I realized I've been investing in the wrong future, I said gently. I raised you to respect what came before you, to value more than just appearances. When I saw my mother's earrings in that dumpster, I understood that I've failed somewhere along the way, or perhaps I've enabled you to forget what truly matters. So this is punishment, he said flatly, because Vanessa threw away some old jewelry. No, I shook my head. This is a correction, for all of us. You and Vanessa have good incomes. You can refinance, or you can downsize, or you can find investors for your renovations instead of assuming I'll continue to fund whatever you want without question. Vanessa's going to be devastated, Nathan said, and I could hear the subtle shift in his argument, from outrage to appeal. She loves that house. She's put so much work into making it perfect. I understand that, I replied, and I'm truly sorry for any distress this causes. But I need to make decisions based on my future now, not just yours. Nathan left angry and bewildered, the loan. Documents unsigned on my dining room table. I didn't expect him to sign them immediately. I knew there would be more conversations, possibly involving lawyers. I was prepared for that possibility. What I wasn't prepared for was the silence that followed. 3 days passed without a word from either Nathan or Vanessa. On the 4th day, as I was leaving for my first mentorship meeting at the Women's Business Initiative, a sleek black car pulled into my driveway. Vanessa emerged, alone, her expression unreadable behind large sunglasses. We need to talk, she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. I nodded, inviting her inside. We sat in the living room, the same room she had once surveyed with thinly veiled disdain. Nathan told me what you're doing, she began, removing her sunglasses to reveal reddened eyes. Taking back the money, forcing us to choose between a loan we can't afford or selling our home. Those aren't the only options, I said. You could scale back the renovations, focus on necessary improvements rather than expansions. She laughed bitterly. You think this is about walk-in closets and granite countertops? This is about our life, the home we've built. A home partially funded by my retirement savings, I reminded her gently. Savings I earned through decades of work, just as Raymond earned his, just as my parents and grandparents worked to acquire the jewelry you discarded. Vanessa flinched at that, her composure cracking slightly. I didn't think. No, I agreed. You didn't think about what those pieces meant to me, just as you haven't thought about what it means to build a life on someone else's foundation without acknowledgement or gratitude. She was quiet for a moment, studying her manicured hands. We can't afford the loan terms, she finally said. Not with the renovation costs we've already committed to. Then you have decisions to make, I replied. Just as I've made mine. Nathan won't speak to you after this, she warned, a last attempt at leverage. He feels betrayed. I hope that's not true, I said, genuine sadness washing over me. But I can't make my decisions based on that fear anymore. After Vanessa left, I drove to my meeting with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. The women I met that afternoon, aspiring business owners with dreams and drive but limited access to capital, reminded me of myself 30 years earlier. Their enthusiasm was contagious, their gratitude for my investment and mentorship transparent and touching. A week passed before I heard from Nathan again. His text was brief. We've decided to sell the house. Realtor coming tomorrow. 2 more weeks went by. I continued my work with the business initiative, establishing a regular schedule of mentorship, sessions, and workshops. I joined a book club that Ellen from next door had been inviting me to for years. I started taking watercolor classes at the community center, something I'd always wanted to try but had never made time for between my accounting practice and family obligations. Then one afternoon, as I was washing brushes after class, my phone rang. Nathan's number. Mom? His voice sounded strained. Can we stop by this evening? Around 7? They arrived precisely at 7, both looking tired but somehow lighter than when I'd last seen them. We sat in the kitchen, the heart of the home where Nathan had grown up, where he'd done homework while I prepared dinner, where Raymond had taught him to make pancakes on Sunday mornings. We sold the house, Nathan said without preamble. We close next month. I see. I nodded, waiting for more. We found a smaller place, Vanessa continued, surprising me by taking the conversational lead. A fixer-upper in Maplewood. It's half the size of the Westbrooke house, and it needs work. But... She glanced at Nathan, something unspoken passing between them. But it's something we can build together, Nathan finished. On our own terms, within our means. I felt a flicker of hope, though I kept my expression neutral. That sounds sensible. We've been talking, Nathan continued, a lot, about priorities, about what matters, about why we were so focused on impressing people with things we couldn't actually afford. And, I prompted when he paused, and we realize we've been... He struggled for the words. Shallow, Vanessa supplied, her directness startling, both of us. Entitled, disrespectful. She reached into her purse and withdrew a small velvet pouch. We found these when we were packing. She opened the pouch and carefully tipped the contents onto the kitchen table. 3 pearl buttons gleamed under the light, salvaged from my grandmother's damaged necklace. They were mixed in with some construction debris, she explained. I recognized them from the necklace. I'm sorry, Margaret. I didn't understand what I was throwing away. The tears that had not come when I found my family treasures in the dumpster now welled up without warning. I picked up one of the pearl buttons, smooth and cool against my fingertip. Thank you for saving these, I managed to say. Mom, Nathan, leaned forward, his expression earnest. We want to pay you back, the full amount you invested in our house. It'll take time. We'll need to start with smaller payments, especially while we're fixing up the new place, but we're committed to repaying what we owe. Not just financially, Vanessa added. We owe you respect, appreciation. She hesitated, then continued with evident difficulty. I've spent the past 2 weeks crying over what I've lost. Not just the house, but the illusion that I was entitled to whatever I wanted without earning it. I've been horrible to you. I looked at these 2 people sitting at my kitchen table, my son, with Raymond's eyes and my stubborn chin, and the woman he had chosen, finally showing genuine emotion, genuine remorse. I didn't take back my investment to punish you, I said softly. I did it because I needed to respect myself, to value my own future and the legacy I want to leave. We understand that now, Nathan nodded. We're actually relieved in a way. The pressure of maintaining that lifestyle of constantly upgrading and improving, it was exhausting. And empty, Vanessa added quietly. I kept thinking each renovation, each new purchase would finally make me feel enough. But it never did. I reached for the sapphire ring on my finger, twisting it thoughtfully. I have a proposal, I said. I'd like to redirect the money from your house sale. They exchanged confused glances. Instead of paying me back directly, I'd like you to establish a trust, I continued. Part of it will go to your future. Buying your new home outright, starting retirement accounts if you don't already have them, and part will go to the women's business initiative I've been working with. A trust? Nathan echoed. But don't you need the money for your retirement? I smiled. I've discovered that my needs are simpler than I thought. My house is paid for, my health is good, and I've found purpose in mentoring these new entrepreneurs. What would give me greater peace than financial repayment is knowing that you both understand the value of what you have, and that you're building something meaningful together. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do this for us after how we've treated you? Because family isn't just about blood or marriage, I said, thinking of Raymond, of my parents, of the generations before them. It's about continuing something worthy, passing on values that matter. Sometimes that means jewelry or money, but more often, it means wisdom, compassion, the willingness to work for what matters. In the months that followed, I watched as Nathan and Vanessa transformed, not just their modest new home in Maplewood, but themselves. Nathan took woodworking classes and built much of their furniture by hand. Vanessa started a small but growing interior design business, focusing on sustainable renovations for growing families. The sapphire ring remains on my finger where it belongs, but on my desk sits a shadow box containing 3 pearl buttons and a small gold clasp, remnants of what was lost, reminders of what was found. Next to it stands a framed photograph of Nathan and Vanessa painting their new living room, laughing, splattered with color, building their own legacy one brush stroke at a time. Sometimes the things we discard reveal more about us than what we keep. And sometimes what appears to be loss becomes the path to something far more valuable, if we have the courage to follow where it leads. The silence of my house became oppressive. In the days following my confrontation with Nathan and Vanessa, I wandered from room to room, alternating between conviction in my decision and crushing doubt. Had I overreacted? Was I punishing my son for his wife's callousness? The damaged jewelry box sat on my kitchen table, a visual reminder of what had prompted my actions. Each time I passed it, I ran my fingers over the cracked wood, remembering the Christmas when Raymond had presented it to me, filled with my mother's treasures. The past lives in these pieces, he had said, but the future does too. I hadn't fully understood what he meant then. Now, the weight of his words settled heavily on my shoulders. On the 5th day, I received an unexpected call from Diana Parker, Vanessa's mother. We had met a handful of times at various functions, maintaining the polite distance of in-laws who recognize they have little in common beyond their children's marriage. Diana was elegant in the same carefully curated way as her daughter, though decades of maintaining that facade had left fine stress lines around her eyes that no cosmetic procedure could quite erase. "Margaret," she began without preamble when I answered, "We need to discuss this situation with Nathan and Vanessa." "Hello, Diana," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "What situation are you referring to?" "Don't be coy," she said sharply. "Vanessa called me in tears last night. Something about you demanding repayment for their house, after throwing a fit about some old costume jewelry." I took a deep breath, fighting the immediate surge of indignation. "I think there may be some misunderstanding about what occurred." "Enlighten me then," I explained as calmly as I could, about finding my family heirlooms discarded in the dumpster. About the history those pieces carried, the generations of women who had treasured them. About my decision to reconsider my financial support in light of what the incident revealed about our family dynamics. "So, this is punishment?" Diana concluded. When I finished. "Vanessa makes one careless mistake, and you're willing to potentially force them out of their home over it?" "That's not how I see it," I said. "This isn't about punishment. It's about recognizing a pattern that needs to change." "What pattern?" Diana's voice dripped with skepticism. "The pattern where you've supposedly been too generous? Because, from where I stand, you've been fortunate to be included in their lives at all, given your differences." The implication was clear enough. Diana had never approved of me as an in-law, the practical accountant from a middle-class background, lacking the social connections and polish she valued. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed so blatantly stung more than I expected. "Our differences are precisely the point," I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. "I've spent 3 years trying to bridge those differences with financial support, with gifts, with compromise. I've received very little in return." "They invited you for holidays," Diana countered. "They consulted you on the house renovations." I almost laughed at that. "They informed me they were converting the room I stay in when I visit into a closet." "That's not consultation, Diana." There was a pause on the line. When Diana spoke again, her tone had shifted from confrontational to calculating. "I understand. You may feel underappreciated, Margaret. That's a common complaint among mothers-in-law. But surely we can find a less drastic solution than threatening their home." "I'm not threatening anything," I said firmly. "I'm clarifying the nature of my financial contribution. They're free to make their own decisions about how to proceed." "Robert and I could help them," Diana offered, surprising me. "If this is truly about the money, we could arrange to cover what you contributed. Then everyone could move forward without this unpleasantness." The offer was tempting in its simplicity. Diana and Robert could certainly afford to replace my investment. Robert's investment banking career had provided them with substantial wealth. The problem would disappear. Things could return to normal. But normal hadn't been working, had it? Normal had led to my family treasures in a dumpster, to a relationship where I was valued for my checkbook rather than my presence. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but this isn't just about the money. It's about respect, about building. A relationship that isn't primarily transactional." Diana sighed heavily. "You're being unreasonable, Margaret. I had hoped we could resolve this like adults." "I believe I am being an adult," I replied. "I'm making decisions about my financial resources based on my needs and values, and I'm communicating those decisions clearly." "Well," Diana's voice turned frosty, "I suppose we'll see how Nathan and Vanessa handle this. I can't imagine this will improve your relationship with them." After Diana hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, feeling oddly empowered despite her attempt at intimidation. For years, I had measured my words carefully around the Parkers, always conscious of their judgment, their subtle signals that I wasn't quite good enough for their social circle. Now I had spoken my truth without apology. The phone call with Diana had clarified something important. This wasn't just about Nathan and Vanessa's dismissal of my family heirlooms. It was about a fundamental imbalance in how we valued each other, an imbalance I had perpetuated by trying to buy acceptance with financial support and unlimited accommodation. The following morning, my doorbell rang shortly after 8 a.m. I opened it to find Robert Parker standing on my porch, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Unlike Diana's polished presentation, Robert appeared rumpled and tired, his silver hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. "Margaret," he nodded. "May? I come in? I believe we have some matters to discuss." I invited him in, oddly calm despite the unexpected visit. We sat in my living room, the morning light casting long shadows across the hardwood floors Raymond had installed himself 30 years ago. "Diana told me about your conversation," Robert began, his voice gravelly. "I thought perhaps it might be helpful if we spoke directly." "I appreciate that," I said, genuinely surprised by his initiative. In our limited interactions, Robert had always seemed content to let Diana manage family matters. "I understand there was some incident with jewelry?" he asked tentatively. I gave him the same explanation I had given Diana, though I noticed he listened more attentively, nodding occasionally, his expression growing more troubled as I described finding the heirlooms discarded. "That was thoughtless," he admitted when I finished. "I can see why you were upset." His acknowledgement, so different from Diana's dismissive reaction, caught me off guard. "Thank you for understanding." Robert shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "However, I'm concerned about your decision regarding the house investment. Nathan and Vanessa are quite distressed." "I imagine they are," I said. "Change is often distressing, especially when it's unexpected." "Diana suggested we could reimburse your contribution," he continued. "I'm prepared to write a check today, if that would resolve the situation." I studied Robert more carefully. Behind the offer, I sensed something different from Diana's calculated intervention. "May I ask why you're making this offer, Robert? Is it because you believe I'm being unfair?" He sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. "To be honest, Margaret, it's because I understand more than you might think." "What do you mean?" Robert gazed out my window for a long moment before answering. "Did Vanessa ever tell you how she ended up in luxury brand management?" I shook my head. "Nathan mentioned she had always been interested in fashion." "That's the polished version," Robert said with a rueful smile. "The truth is more complicated. Vanessa originally wanted to be an artist, a painter. She had genuine talent, studied fine arts in college, even had a small gallery showing her junior year. This revelation stunned me. Nothing about Vanessa's carefully constructed persona suggested artistic passion. "What happened?" I asked. "Diana happened?" Robert said softly, then immediately looked guilty. "That's not entirely fair. We both discouraged her, but Diana was more emphatic. We had expectations for our daughter, practical expectations about career, lifestyle, social position. Art didn't fit that vision. So she gave it up. Not immediately. She fought us at first, but gradually she adapted to our vision instead of pursuing her own. We funded her master's degree in marketing, helped her secure internships with luxury brands, introduced her to the right people." Robert's expression grew distant. "She became exactly who we raised her to be, someone who values appearances, who measures worth by price tags and status symbols." The parallels weren't lost on me. "And now you're offering to write another check to solve another problem." Robert nodded, a flash of self-awareness in his tired eyes. "It's what we do. It's all we know how to do, really." For the first time, I felt a glimmer of empathy for Vanessa, and for the Parkers. They were trapped in patterns of their own, making, just as I had been. "I can't accept your money, Robert," I said gently. "Not because I'm trying to punish anyone, but because I think we all need to find different ways of relating to each other. Better ways." "And if they lose the house?" he challenged, though without Diana's combative edge. "If their marriage struggles under the financial strain?" "Then they'll face those challenges together, as a couple," I replied. "They'll make decisions based on their actual resources rather than the cushion of parental bailouts. They might even discover strengths they didn't know they had." Robert was quiet for a long time. Finally, he stood to leave. "You're either very wise or very foolish, Margaret Collins. I'm not sure which yet." "Neither am I," admitted with a small smile, "but I'm willing to find out." After Robert left, I made a decision. I gathered the damaged jewelry pieces and took them to Harold Klein, a jeweler in downtown Elmwood whose family had been in business for generations. Harold's father had resized Raymond's wedding ring 40 years earlier, and Harold himself had repaired the clasp on my pearl necklace more than once over the decades. The small bell above the door jangled as I entered the shop. Harold looked up from his workbench, his magnifying glasses giving him the appearance of a curious owl. "Margaret Collins," he smiled warmly. "It's been too long. What brings you in today?" I carefully placed the damaged jewelry box on his counter and opened it to reveal its contents. Harold's expression sobered as he examined each piece. "What happened here?" he asked, gently lifting the bent gold bracelet. "They were thrown away," I said simply. "I recovered what I could, but as you can see, there's significant damage." Harold clicked his tongue disapprovingly. "Such beautiful pieces. The workmanship on this brooch alone. You don't see craftsmanship like this anymore." "Can anything be salvaged?" I asked. He examined each piece methodically, occasionally making notes on a small pad. "The bracelet can be repaired, though it will never be quite the same. The brooch is missing its center stone, a garnet, I believe." "Carnelian," I corrected. "It was my great-grandmother's." "Finding a matching stone will be challenging, but—" "Not impossible," he mused. "The pearl necklace is the most problematic. Several pearls are missing, and the ones that remain have been damaged by exposure to the elements." I had expected as much. "What would you suggest?" Harold thought for a moment. "I could restring the remaining intact pearls into a shorter necklace or perhaps a bracelet. The clasp is still quite beautiful despite the damage. We could feature it as a centerpiece." "And the diamond earrings?" "One is salvageable with minor repairs. The other—" He shook his head. "The setting is too damaged, though the stone itself is fine." "Could the stone be reset in something new?" I asked, an idea beginning to form. "Certainly. Did you have something in mind?" I did, though the thought surprised me as much as it might surprise others. "I'd like to create something new from these pieces. Not just repairs, but a transformation. Something that honors their history while acknowledging what they've been through." Harold's eyes lit with professional interest. "A conversation piece, then. Something with a story." "Exactly." Over the next hour, Harold and I sketched possibilities. The intact diamond would become the center of a new pendant, surrounded by the surviving pearls. The gold from the bracelet would be melted down and combined with the remaining earring setting to create a modern yet timeless design. The brooch would be reimagined as a statement ring, with the missing carnelian replaced by a small piece of amber that Harold had in his collection. A different stone entirely, but one with its own history, its own story of preservation through time. "It will take several weeks," Harold warned, "and it won't be inexpensive." "I understand," I said, "but I think it will be worth it." As I left the jeweler's shop, I felt lighter than I had in days. The damaged heirlooms wouldn't be restored to their original state. That wasn't possible after what they'd endured. But they would be transformed into something new, something that acknowledged both their history and their journey. It seemed an apt metaphor for what was happening in my family. 2 days later, I received a text from Nathan. "We need to talk. Dinner tomorrow? Just the two of us." We met at Giovanni's, the small Italian restaurant where we had celebrated countless family milestones over the years. The owner, Carlo, greeted me with his usual enthusiasm. "Signora Collins, so good to see you. And Nathan, too, just like old times, yes?" Not quite like old times, I thought as we were seated in a quiet corner booth. Nathan looked tired, the strain of recent events evident in the shadows under his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. "How are you?" I asked after Carlo had taken our orders and left us with a basket of warm bread. "Honestly, stressed, confused, angry." Nathan tore a piece of bread in half but didn't eat it. Vanessa and I have been fighting nonstop. Her parents are involved now, which makes everything worse. I know, I said. They both came to see me. Nathan looked up sharply. They did? When? Earlier this week. Diana called first, then Robert visited the next morning. What did they want? To offer money, primarily. Robert wanted to write a check to cover your down payment. Nathan's expression darkened. Of course they did. That's their solution to everything. Just throw money at any problem until it goes away. He laughed bitterly. Guess I've been doing the same thing, haven't I? Expecting you to solve our problems with your checkbook. The self-awareness surprised me. That's a rather insightful observation. Yeah, well, nothing like a crisis to force some perspective. He finally took a bite of bread, chewing thoughtfully. Did you know Vanessa used to be a painter? Robert mentioned it, I acknowledged. She never told me until last night, Nathan said. We were arguing about the house, about money, about everything, really. She broke down crying and started talking about this gallery showing she had in college, how her parents gradually pressured her into giving it up. That must have been a difficult conversation. It was. Illuminating, Nathan replied. I realized I didn't know my own wife. Or maybe I knew the version of her that her parents shaped, but not who she really was beneath all that. Our meals arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. After Carlo had fussed over the presentation and finally left us to eat, Nathan continued. You know what the strangest part is? When Vanessa talked about her art, she came alive in a way I've never seen before. Her eyes lit up, her whole body language changed. And I thought, where has this person been for the past 4 years? People bury parts of themselves that they've been taught are unacceptable or impractical, I said, thinking of my own compromises over the years, the dreams I had set aside for practicality's sake. Sometimes so deeply they forget those parts exist. Nathan nodded. That's what Vanessa said too. She hasn't picked up a paintbrush in almost a decade, says she wouldn't even know where to start now. It's never too late to rediscover what you love, I offered, thinking of my recent involvement with the Women's Business Initiative, the satisfaction I'd found in mentoring others. That's actually why I wanted to meet, Nathan said, setting down his fork. We've made some decisions, big ones. About the house? About everything. He took a deep breath. We're selling the house. We've already listed it, and there's been serious interest. The market in Westbrooke Heights is still strong. I see, I said carefully. And then? Then we're moving to New Hampshire. This was unexpected. New Hampshire? Why? Vanessa's aunt lives there, her mother's sister. They've been estranged for years because the aunt chose to live unconventionally, according to Diana. She runs an artist's retreat in a converted barn on this huge old property near Portsmouth. And you're going to join her? I couldn't quite visualize my corporate son and his polished wife in such a setting. We're going to help her, Nathan clarified. The property needs work and the business side needs organization. I can handle the financial aspects remotely from my current job, at least for a while. And Vanessa. He smiled slightly. Vanessa is going to try painting again. Her aunt has been asking her to come teach workshops for years. I was momentarily speechless. This was so far from what I had expected, so much more dramatic a change than simply downsizing to a smaller home in the same community. That's quite a transformation, I finally managed. We need it, Nathan said simply. Both of us. This life we've been living, it's hollow. We've been performing for an audience that doesn't even matter. The house, the renovations, the constant striving for more, better, bigger. For what? So Vanessa's parents will approve? So my colleagues will be impressed. None of it has made us happy. And you think New Hampshire will? I think simplifying will. I think Vanessa rediscovering her passion will. I think building something meaningful together might. The conviction in his voice was something I hadn't heard from my son in years. Not since he was in college, talking about his dreams before the corporate path and Vanessa's influence had redirected his ambitions. When did you make this decision? I asked. We've been talking about it for days, but we didn't fully commit until this morning. Vanessa called her aunt, and I spoke with my boss about remote work options. He hesitated. We wanted to tell you first, before anyone else, especially before Vanessa's parents. I'm honored, I said, meaning it. And I think it sounds like an adventure worth taking. You do? Nathan seemed surprised by my ready acceptance. I thought you might try to talk us out of it. Tell us we're being impulsive or irresponsible. Would that have worked? I asked with a small smile. Probably not, he admitted. We're pretty determined. Then why waste my breath? I reached across the table to cover his hand with mine. Nathan, I've only ever wanted you to be happy, truly happy, not just successfully unhappy. If this path might lead there, I'm all for it. Relief visibly washed over him. Thank you. That means more than you know. When do you plan to move? As soon as the house sells. We're pricing it to move quickly. Diana will have a fit when she sees the listing. He grimaced at the thought. We're taking almost nothing with us. Just clothes, personal items, a few necessities. Starting fresh. What about the furniture? The renovations you've already completed? Selling with the house, the new owners can enjoy the granite countertops and designer lighting fixtures. His tone was lightly mocking but without bitterness. We won't need any of that at Aunt Lillian's. The retreat is rustic, intentionally so. Artists come there to strip away distractions, to focus on their work. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. From converting a nursery into a walk-in closet to living in a rustic art retreat, that's quite a journey in just a few weeks. Nathan laughed, the sound warming my heart. Life comes at you fast, Mom. As we finished our meal, Nathan grew more serious again. About the down payment money, we still plan to repay you. It will take longer now with the career changes, but it's important to us. To me. We can talk about that later, I said. Right now, I just want you to focus on this transition. It won't be easy, especially for Vanessa. She's terrified, he admitted. Excited, but terrified. What if she can't paint anymore? What if she's forgotten how? What if she was never actually talented to begin with? Those are normal fears when returning to something long abandoned, I assured him. The important thing is that she's willing to try. After dinner, Nathan walked me to my car. Before I got in, he surprised me with a tight hug, the kind he used to give me when he was younger, before adulthood and marriage had introduced a certain formality to our interactions. I'm sorry about the jewelry, he said quietly. I should have understood what it meant to you. It's not about the jewelry itself, I replied, hugging him back just as tightly. It's about what it represented. Connection, history, values that transcend material worth. I understand that now, he said. At least I'm starting to. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the unexpected turn events had taken. When I'd found my family heirlooms discarded in that dumpster, I could never have anticipated that the incident would catalyze such profound changes, not just in my relationship with Nathan and Vanessa, but in their entire life trajectory. The next morning, I received a text from Vanessa asking if she could visit. She arrived looking both nervous and determined, dressed more casually than I had ever seen her in jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Nathan told you about New Hampshire? She asked as we sat in my sunroom, the morning light painting patterns on the floor. He did, I confirmed. It sounds like a significant change. It's terrifying, she admitted, echoing Nathan's assessment from the previous evening. I haven't painted in so long. What if I've lost whatever talent I once had? Then you'll find it again, I said simply, or discover new talents. The point is that you're choosing your own path now. She nodded, twisting her hands in her lap. I wanted to apologize about the jewelry. I didn't understand what I was throwing away. I saw old things taking up space, not family history, not connections to the past. Would you like to know their stories? I asked. The women who wore those pieces before you? Vanessa looked up, surprised. You'd still share that with me? After what I did? Of course, I said. That's what the jewelry was always meant to do. Connect generations, carry stories forward. The physical items may be damaged, but the stories remain intact. For the next hour, I told Vanessa about my grandmother, who had worn the pearl necklace when she sailed from England to America as a young bride. About my mother, who had received the diamond earrings as a graduation gift when she earned her nursing degree against her father's wishes. About Raymond's grandmother, who had commissioned the brooch with the carnelian stone to celebrate the birth of her first child after 3 heartbreaking miscarriages. Vanessa listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. I wish I had known these stories before, she said when I finished. They might have helped me understand why the jewelry mattered so much to you. I should have shared them sooner, I acknowledged. I assumed the value was self-evident, but without the stories, they were just old things taking up space in your jewelry box. Like paintings without context, Vanessa mused. My Aunt Lillian always says that art isn't just about technique or aesthetics. It's about the story it tells, the emotion it evokes, the connection it creates between artist and viewer. Your aunt sounds wise, I smiled. I look forward to meeting her someday. You will, Vanessa said with surprising firmness. We want you to visit once we're settled, if you're willing. I'd like that very much. As Vanessa prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. Nathan said you took the damaged jewelry to be repaired. Not exactly repaired, I explained. Transformed. The jeweler is creating new pieces that incorporate elements from the old ones, acknowledging their history while giving them new purpose. That's beautiful, Vanessa said softly. And appropriate, somehow. After she left, I sat in my sunroom, watching the play of light through the windows. The conversation with Vanessa had been surreal in many ways. Her casual attire, her genuine interest in family stories, her vulnerability about her artistic aspirations. It was as if the perfectly polished facade had cracked, revealing a more authentic person beneath. Later that afternoon, I drove to the community center for my weekly mentoring session with the women entrepreneurs. As I parked, I noticed Diana Parker's distinctive silver Mercedes in the lot, an unusual sight in this part of town. Diana herself stood near the entrance, her posture stiff with barely contained anger. "Margaret," she called as I approached, "we need to talk, now." I gestured toward the building. "I have a commitment inside. Perhaps we could meet afterward." "This can't wait," Diana insisted. "Nathan and Vanessa have lost their minds, and I hold you entirely responsible." I sighed, recognizing that this confrontation was inevitable. "Let's sit over there," I suggested, indicating a small garden area with benches, more private than standing in the parking lot. Once seated, Diana wasted no time. "New Hampshire? An artist's retreat? Have you any idea how absurd this sounds? Vanessa knows nothing about running a business like that. And to throw away a perfectly good house for some dilapidated barn in the middle of nowhere. It's their decision to make," I said calmly. "A decision they never would have considered if you hadn't forced this financial crisis upon them," Diana countered. "They were perfectly happy until you decided to play these manipulative games." I considered Diana carefully, her expensive clothes, her perfect manicure, her face taut with cosmetic procedures designed to erase any sign of aging or emotion. She had constructed her life as carefully as Vanessa had constructed hers, each choice reinforcing a particular image, a particular status. Were they happy, Diana? Or were they just meeting expectations? What's that supposed to mean? I think you know Vanessa gave up painting because you and Robert deemed it impractical, I said gently. She buried that passion to become what you wanted her to be. Now she's reclaiming it. Diana's expression flickered. Painting was a hobby, not a career path. We wanted security for our daughter, not some bohemian fantasy that would leave her struggling to pay rent. And now? Now she's throwing away everything we helped her build. Diana's composure cracked. The connections, the position she's earned, the lifestyle suitable for someone of her background, all of it discarded for some artistic midlife crisis. Or perhaps she's finally choosing her own path, I suggested, finding her authentic voice rather than echoing yours. Diana stood abruptly. I didn't come here for amateur psychology, Margaret. I came to tell you that Robert and I will not support this ridiculous venture. If they go through with this move, they're on their own. I think that's exactly what they want, I said quietly. To be on their own, making their own choices, discovering who they are beyond your expectations. And you support this madness? I support them finding their own way, yes. Diana shook her head, her expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. You've always resented us, haven't you? Our success, our social position. This is your revenge, turning our daughter against us. This isn't about you or me, Diana, I said, rising to meet her gaze. It's about Nathan and Vanessa finding their authentic selves after years of performing roles that have left them hollow. Hollow? Diana scoffed. They had everything. Everything except purpose, except genuine fulfillment. I softened my tone. Diana, they're not rejecting you. They're just choosing a different path than the one you envisioned for them. She turned away, but not before I glimpsed something beneath the anger. Fear, perhaps. Fear of losing control, of losing connection, of confronting her own choices through her daughter's rejection of them. This conversation is pointless, Diana said stiffly. When this adventure inevitably fails, they'll come to their senses. I just hope it doesn't destroy their marriage in the process. As she walked back to her Mercedes, shoulders rigid with indignation, I felt an unexpected wave of compassion. Diana, for all her wealth and social standing, was imprisoned by the very expectations she had created, unable to adapt, to grow, to acknowledge that her daughter might find fulfillment in a life very different from her own. I watched her drive away, then turned toward the community center, toward the women who were working to build businesses aligned with their values and passions. Women who were, in various ways, defying expectations and charting their own courses. Perhaps there was a lesson there for all of us. 3 months passed in a flurry of activity. Nathan and Vanessa's house sold within 2 weeks of listing, for less than the original purchase price, but enough to clear their mortgage and provide a modest financial cushion for their new beginning. The buyers were a young family with 2 small children and a third on the way. When they asked if the nursery furniture could stay, Vanessa had agreed immediately, her eyes bright with unexpected tears. It belongs in a real nursery, she told me later, not hidden behind designer shoes and handbags. The day of their departure arrived with unseasonable warmth for early spring. I helped them load the last few boxes into their SUV, which now contained the entirety of their pared-down possessions. Nathan had sold his luxury sedan the week before, laughing about how out of place it would be on the muddy rural roads of New Hampshire. "You're sure about this address?" I asked, double-checking. The navigation settings on their phone. Portsmouth was a 6-hour drive, and Aunt Lillian's property was apparently another 30 minutes beyond that, down winding country roads with spotty cell service. Lillian sent detailed directions, Vanessa assured me. She looked different. Already. Her expertly highlighted hair now pulled back in a simple braid, her designer clothes replaced with practical layers suitable for New England spring. The transformation went deeper than appearance, though. There was an ease in her movements, a brightness in her eyes that spoke of genuine excitement rather than the practiced enthusiasm she had once displayed for material acquisitions. "We should get going if we want to make it before dark," Nathan said, checking his watch. Not the status symbol he once wore, but a simple digital timepiece better suited to the physical work awaiting them at the retreat. Of course. I stepped back, suddenly, emotional at this parting. Despite the tensions and transformations of recent months, they were still my family, still the people I loved most in the world. And they were venturing into the unknown, taking a risk that both terrified and inspired me. "We'll call when we arrive," Vanessa promised, surprising me with a warm hug, "and we'll send pictures of the property." "I'd like that," I said, returning her embrace. "I want to see this magical place that's calling you both so strongly." "It's not magical." "Exactly," Nathan smiled. "Actually, according to Lillian, it's a bit of a mess. The retreat buildings need significant work, and the main house has been partially renovated over decades, resulting in what she calls a charming architectural identity crisis. Perfect for two people having their own identity revelations," I observed. Nathan laughed, pulling me into a tight hug. "Exactly. We're all works in progress, aren't we?" After one last round of goodbyes, they pulled away from the curb, Nathan waving as they turned the corner. I stood watching long after they had disappeared from view, feeling an odd mixture of loss and liberation. They were embarking on their journey. I was continuing mine. Different paths, but perhaps leading to more authentic connections than we had managed before. The house felt exceptionally quiet that evening. I wandered from room to room, eventually settling in my study where a stack of business plans awaited. My review. The women entrepreneurs I mentored were preparing for their first round of funding presentations, and I had promised feedback on their financial projections and marketing strategies. I was halfway through the third presentation when my doorbell rang. Glancing at the clock, I was surprised to see it was nearly 9 in the evening, too late for casual visitors. When I opened the door, I found Diana Parker standing on my porch, her usual polished appearance notably disheveled. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, her face devoid of makeup, her clothing rumpled as if she had been wearing it all day. "They're gone," she said without preamble, her voice rough with emotion. "They actually went through with it." "Yes," I confirmed gently. "They left this morning." "May I come in?" The question held none of her usual imperious demand, just weary resignation. I stepped aside, gesturing toward the living room. Diana entered but remained standing, her gaze traveling around the room as if seeing it for the first time. Noting the bookshelves filled with well-read volumes, the comfortable furniture arranged. For conversation rather than appearance, the family photographs displayed without pretension. "Robert and I thought they would come to their senses," she said finally. "We were so certain this was just a phase, a temporary rebellion against conventional expectations. That's what the therapist called it." "You're seeing a therapist?" I couldn't hide my surprise. Diana nodded, sinking onto my sofa as if her legs could no longer support her. "Robert insisted. He said we needed professional help to understand why our daughter would abandon everything we built for her." I sat across from her, noting the vulnerability in her posture, so different from her usual rigid composure. "And what has the therapist suggested?" "That we look inward rather than outward, that we examine our own choices, our own values." Diana laughed bitterly. "Apparently we've been living by a script rather than authentic desires. Sound familiar?" "It resonates," I acknowledged. Diana was quiet for a moment, studying her manicured hands, one of the few elements of her usual presentation that remained intact. "Did Vanessa tell you she was accepted to the Rhode Island School of Design? Full scholarship? Senior year of high school?" "No," I said softly. "She didn't mention that." "She was extraordinarily talented. Her art teacher said she had a unique perspective, a voice that needed to be developed. Diana's expression grew distant. Robert and I were terrified. We both came from families that struggled financially. His father was a carpenter who drank away half his earnings. My mother cleaned houses to put food on the table after my father left. The revelation of Diana's background stunned me. I had always assumed she came from old money, from generations of privilege. I had no idea. "No one does," Diana said flatly. "We reinvented ourselves completely. College, graduate school, strategic marriages, though we were fortunate enough to actually fall in love. Everything calculated to ensure financial security, social position, a life as far removed as possible from our origins. And Vanessa's artistic talent threatened that narrative, I guessed." Diana nodded. "We saw her passion for art as a regression, a return to the precarious existence we had worked so hard to escape. So we steered her toward practical choices, toward the path we had established as successful." "At the cost of her authentic self," I said, not unkindly. "Yes." The admission seemed to physically pain her. "The therapist suggested that our fear of instability created a prison, for ourselves, and for Vanessa. A gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless." We sat in silence for a moment, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway marking the passage of this extraordinary conversation. I had never imagined Diana capable of such self-reflection, such vulnerability. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. Diana looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "Because you saw what we couldn't. You recognized the hollowness beneath the perfect surface, and when you reclaimed your investment, you forced a reckoning that we had been avoiding for years." "That wasn't my intention," I said truthfully. "I was simply establishing boundaries, prioritizing my own needs after years of putting them last. Nevertheless, your actions created the conditions for change." Diana straightened slightly, some of her habitual composure returning. "I want to understand how to support Vanessa's choices now, even if they terrify me. Even if they reject everything I thought was important." The request was genuine. I could see it in the unguarded emotion on her face, hear it in the tremor of her voice. Diana Parker was asking for my help, my guidance. The irony might have been satisfying under different circumstances, but now it simply felt like an opportunity for healing. The first step might be visiting them in New Hampshire, I suggested, seeing their new life with an open mind, without judgment. "Robert suggested the same thing," Diana admitted. "But I'm afraid. Afraid they won't welcome me. Afraid I won't know how to relate to this version of my daughter." "Those are valid fears," I acknowledged. "But consider the alternative. Allowing the distance to grow until reconciliation becomes impossible." Diana nodded slowly. "The therapist says I need to practice acceptance without expectation. It's challenging." "Growth usually is," I said with a small smile. When Diana left an hour later, something had shifted between us. Not friendship exactly, but a mutual recognition, a shared concern for the two people we both loved, despite our different expressions of that love. The following week, Harold Klein called to inform me that the jewelry transformations were complete. I drove to his shop that afternoon, curious and slightly apprehensive about what he had created from the damaged heirlooms. "I took some creative liberties," Harold warned as he retrieved a velvet tray from his safe. "The pieces told me what they wanted to become." What lay on the tray took my breath away. The pendant was stunning. My mother's diamond, now surrounded by a delicate arrangement of the salvaged pearls, set in a pattern that suggested ripples on water. The gold bracelet had been reborn as a slender bangle with an intricate woven pattern, incorporating tiny fragments of the various damaged pieces in a mosaic effect. Most striking was the ring. The brooch's ornate setting had been simplified, but still retained its vintage character, now showcasing the amber stone that seemed to glow with inner light. "Harold," I breathed. "These are extraordinary." "They have character now," he said with quiet pride. "Beauty born of damage and recovery. Like people who have weathered difficulties and emerged stronger." As I drove home with the jewelry box containing these transformed treasures, I thought about Harold's words. Beauty born of damage and recovery. Wasn't that what was happening with my family? The painful discarding of the heirlooms had initiated a transformation none of us could have anticipated, a breaking apart that allowed for authentic reconstruction. I placed the jewelry box on my dresser next to the framed photograph of Raymond that had watched over me for 5 years since his passing. "You would appreciate the symbolism," I told his smiling image. "You always did have a poetic way of seeing the world." That evening, I received the first photos from New Hampshire. Nathan had sent a series of images showing a sprawling farmhouse with multiple additions in various architectural styles, surrounding gardens gone wild with neglect, but promising abundant beauty once reclaimed, and several outbuildings that indeed appeared to need significant work. The final photo showed Vanessa standing before an easel in a sunlit studio space, paintbrush in hand, her expression a mixture of terror and exhilaration. The caption read, "First day back at the canvas. Terrifying and wonderful." I sent back a message of encouragement, then spent the rest of the evening reviewing business plans, making notes, and preparing for the next day's mentoring sessions. My life had found a new rhythm in recent months, structured yet flexible, purposeful yet allowing for spontaneity. I was no longer defining myself primarily as Nathan's mother or Raymond's widow, but as Margaret Collins, mentor, investor, woman with her own distinct value and voice. 2 weeks later, I attended the funding presentation event for the women, entrepreneurs I had been mentoring. The community center's meeting room had been transformed for the occasion, with proper audiovisual equipment, elegant refreshments, and seating for potential investors from throughout the region. Patrick Sullivan greeted me at the door, his expression pleased but not surprised by the professional atmosphere. "Your influence is evident," he noted. 6 months ago, these women wouldn't have known how to approach investors, let alone create compelling presentations. "They did the work," I demurred. "I just provided guidance." "Don't undersell your contribution, Margaret," Patrick said firmly. "You've given them more than financial advice. You've shown them what's possible when women support each other instead of competing." The event exceeded even my optimistic expectations. Each presenter demonstrated thorough preparation, realistic financial projections, and passionate commitment to their business concepts. By the end of the evening, all 10 had secured at least initial funding commitments, with several attracting multiple investors eager to support their visions. As the event wound down, I found myself in conversation with Eleanor Ramirez, whose innovative childcare concept had generated particular enthusiasm among investors. At 68, Eleanor was the oldest of the entrepreneurs, a retired teacher, who had identified a critical need in the community and developed a solution that combined education, care, and family support. "I never imagined starting a business at my age," she confided as we enjoyed coffee and dessert. "I thought retirement meant gardening and book clubs, pleasant but not particularly purposeful." "What changed your perspective?" I asked. "Necessity. Initially," Eleanor admitted. "My pension isn't sufficient with today's costs. But once I started developing the concept, working with the other women in the program, I discovered something unexpected. I'm not finished contributing. I have experience, insight, energy still to give. Why waste that just because I've reached a certain age?" Her words resonated deeply. I had been asking myself similar questions since Raymond's passing, though I hadn't articulated them as clearly as Eleanor had just done. "Purpose doesn't have an expiration date," I agreed. "Neither does growth or reinvention." "Exactly. Eleanor's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Margaret, you should join our weekly entrepreneurial support group. We meet Thursday evenings at the library. Many of us are in this second act of life, figuring out how to make the most of our accumulated wisdom while still embracing new possibilities." I promised to attend the next meeting, surprised by how appealing the invitation felt. 6 months ago, I would have declined automatically, assuming my evenings should remain open in case Nathan and Vanessa needed me. Now, I was building connections and commitments based on my own interests, my own path forward. The following Sunday, I received an unexpected call from Robert Parker. His voice was hesitant, lacking its usual authoritative tone. "Margaret, I hope I'm not disturbing your weekend," he began formally. "Not at all, Robert. How are you?" "Managing," he said after a brief pause. "Diana and I are flying to Portsmouth next weekend. Vanessa invited us to see the retreat." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "I know that will mean a great deal to her." "We're apprehensive," Robert admitted. "Diana, especially. This is so far outside our comfort zone, both literally and figuratively. We've never been good at adapting." "Change is difficult for everyone," I offered. "But I believe making the effort will be worth it, regardless of how awkward it might feel initially." Robert cleared his throat. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. Diana and I were wondering if you might consider joining us for the visit." The request caught me completely off guard. "Me? Traveling with you and Diana?" "As a buffer, frankly," Robert said with unexpected candor. "You've maintained a positive relationship with Nathan and Vanessa throughout this transition. You understand their choices in a way we're still struggling to grasp. Your presence might help bridge the gap." I considered the proposal, weighing the potential awkwardness against the opportunity to support this fragile family reconciliation. "I'd be happy to join you," I said finally, "though I should speak with Nathan and Vanessa first, make sure they're comfortable with the arrangement." "Of course," Robert agreed quickly. "We wouldn't want to impose." After hanging up, I immediately called Nathan. His surprise matched my own, but after consulting with Vanessa, he confirmed they would welcome my participation in the visit. "Actually, it's brilliant," he said. "Aunt Lillian has been wanting to meet you anyway, and having you there might help everyone navigate what could otherwise be a really tense weekend." "I'll do my best," I promised, though I'm not sure Diana and I traveling together is a recipe for harmony. "You might be surprised," Nathan replied cryptically. "Mom, things are changing in ways none of us expected. Just keep an open mind." The journey to New Hampshire the following weekend was indeed surprising. Diana, while still impeccably dressed, displayed none of her usual imperious attitude. Instead, she was quiet, occasionally asking thoughtful questions about my mentoring work with the women entrepreneurs. Robert, too, seemed different, more attentive to Diana, more engaged in genuine conversation rather than performative pleasantries. We arrived at Lillian Morgan's property in the late afternoon, the spring sun casting long shadows across the sprawling grounds. Nathan and Vanessa greeted us in the gravel driveway, both tanned from outdoor work, dressed in casual clothes that would have been unthinkable in their previous life. Behind them stood a tall, silver-haired woman with Vanessa's eyes and a relaxed confidence that immediately put me at ease. Lillian Morgan had none of her sister Diana's rigid formality, though the family resemblance was unmistakable. She welcomed us with genuine warmth, leading us into the rambling farmhouse with its eclectic combination of architectural styles and comfortably worn furnishings. "It's not the Ritz," she commented with a laugh as we settled in the large kitchen, where the scent of freshly baked bread filled the air. "But there's honest character in these old walls." Over dinner, a simple but delicious meal of roasted vegetables, herb-crusted chicken, and Lillian's homemade bread, the initial awkwardness gradually softened. Diana remained quiet, absorbing her surroundings with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Robert asked practical questions about the retreat operations, his business mind engaging with Lillian's passion project despite its distance from his usual corporate concerns. After dessert, wild berry cobbler with vanilla, ice cream. Vanessa stood somewhat nervously. "I'd like to show you all something, if you're willing, in the studio barn." We followed her across the moonlit grounds to a renovated barn that glowed with warm light from its many windows. Inside, the space had been divided into several studio areas, though only one appeared to be in active use. In that corner, several canvases stood on easels covered with sheets. "These are my first attempts in years," Vanessa said, her voice tight with emotion. "They're not good. I'm basically starting over, relearning everything I once knew. But they're honest. They're mine." She removed the sheets one by one, revealing 4 paintings in various stages of completion. The subjects were simple: the view from the farmhouse window, a still life of gardening tools, an abstract interpretation of the retreat, buildings. What struck me wasn't their technical proficiency, which, as Vanessa had warned, showed the rustiness of long-dormant skills, but their emotional authenticity. Each canvas vibrated with feeling, tentative joy, quiet contemplation, burgeoning hope. Diana stepped forward slowly, her hand reaching out to touch the frame of the window view painting. "You always loved morning light," she said softly. "Even as a little girl, you would wake at dawn to watch the way it changed the colors in your room." Vanessa's eyes widened in surprise. "You remember that?" "I remember everything, Vanessa," Diana replied, her voice catching. "I remember your first watercolor set, how you painted for hours without stopping. I remember the mural you created on your bedroom wall, the one we made you paint over because it wasn't appropriate for a young lady's room." "A forest with fairies," Vanessa said, the memory clearly still painful. "I worked on it for weeks." "It was beautiful," Diana admitted. "I took photographs before we painted over it. I still have them." The revelation hung in the air between them, an acknowledgement of loss, of suppressed appreciation, of regret that had simmered for decades. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Vanessa asked. "Because acknowledging its beauty would have contradicted my insistence that art wasn't a valid path," Diana answered with painful honesty. "I couldn't reconcile those contradictions then." "And now?" The question held years of longing for maternal approval. Diana gestured to the canvases surrounding us. "Now I see my daughter finding her way back to herself. How could I not celebrate that, even if it terrifies me?" Later that evening, as we settled into the various guest rooms of the sprawling farmhouse, I found myself on the wide covered porch, wrapped in a borrowed sweater against the spring chill. The stars were brilliant here, far from the suburban light pollution I had grown accustomed to in Elmwood. Lillian joined me, offering a mug of herbal tea that smelled of mint and lavender. "Quite a day," she observed, settling into the adjacent rocking chair. "Indeed," I agreed. "Thank you for welcoming us all. I know it can't be easy having Diana here." Lillian's laugh was warm, without bitterness. "My sister and I have been circling each other for decades. This isn't our first attempt at reconciliation, though it might be our most promising." "What happened between you?" I asked, then quickly added, "If you don't mind my asking." "The same thing that happened between Diana and Vanessa," Lillian replied simply. "Diana chose security, convention, social approval. I chose authenticity, creativity, freedom. Neither path was wrong, but we each believed ours was the only valid choice. That kind of certainty doesn't leave much room for connection." I sipped my tea, considering her words. "And now?" "Now we're older," Lillian smiled. "Hopefully wiser. Diana is beginning to recognize the costs of her choices. I've certainly recognized the costs of mine. Perhaps we can finally meet in the middle, appreciating each other's journeys, without judgment." The conversation shifted to other topics: Lillian's retreat, my mentoring work, our shared love of gardening. By the time we said goodnight, I felt I had found a kindred spirit, someone who understood that life's later chapters could be as rich and meaningful as its earlier ones, just in different ways. The weekend continued with moments of tension, but also unexpected connections. Nathan showed Robert and me the renovations he had begun on one of the outbuildings, his enthusiasm for the physical work evident in his animated descriptions, and pride in his developing skills. Vanessa and Diana spent a tentative morning in the studio together, not painting but talking, really talking, perhaps for the first time in their adult relationship. By Sunday afternoon, when it was time for Robert, Diana, and me to depart, something fundamental had shifted. Not reconciliation exactly. Too many years of misunderstanding and mutual disappointment remained for that. But an opening, a willingness to see each other beyond the roles we had assigned and assumed. As we prepared to leave, Vanessa approached, me privately, pressing something into my hand. "Nathan and I want you to have this," she said. "We found it in Portsmouth last week and immediately thought of you." It was a small carved box made of cherry wood, similar in size to the one that had contained my family jewelry. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with delicate inlaid patterns reminiscent of flowing water. "It's beautiful," I said, deeply touched by the gesture. "For your transformed jewelry," Vanessa explained. "Nathan told me you had the damaged pieces recreated into something new. We thought they deserved a home that reflects their journey. Beautiful despite the breaks, maybe even because of them." The thoughtfulness of the gift moved me to tears. "Thank you," I managed. "This means more than you know." "We're learning," Vanessa said simply. "Slowly, imperfectly, but we're learning." The drive back to Elmwood was companionable, the sigh. 3 of us sharing observations about the retreat, about Nathan and Vanessa's transformation, about our own evolving perspectives. When Robert dropped me at my home, Diana surprised me with a brief but genuine hug. "Thank you for coming with us," she said, "for helping us see what we might have missed on our own." "We're all finding our way," I replied. "One step at a time." That evening, I carefully transferred the transformed jewelry from Harold's boxes to the cherry wood container Vanessa and Nathan had given me. The pieces nestled perfectly inside, their recreated beauty complemented by the box's craftsmanship. I placed it on my dresser beside Raymond's photograph, a tangible symbol of the journey we had all undertaken. 6 months later, I stood in the center of a transformed room in my house. Once Raymond's office, now my own creative space. The entrepreneurs support group Eleanor had introduced me to had encouraged me to explore my own suppressed creative interests, leading to the discovery that I had both talent and passion for mosaic art. The walls now displayed my first completed pieces, abstract designs incorporating fragments of colored glass, ceramic, even bits of the damaged jewelry too, small to be incorporated into Harold's transformations. My phone chimed with a text notification. It was from Nathan, containing a photograph of Vanessa standing proudly beside a displayed canvas at what appeared to be a small gallery. The caption read, "First public showing. Sold 2 pieces. Mom and Dad attended. Civil, even happy. Miracles never cease." I smiled, setting the phone aside to return to the mosaic I was currently assembling, a representation of broken pieces finding new arrangement, new purpose, new beauty. Like the jewelry I had recovered from the dumpster that day, like the relationships that had fractured and begun to heal in different configurations, like my own life in this unexpected chapter, the pieces of my existence had been dismantled, some discarded carelessly, others deliberately set aside. But what emerged from that dismantling wasn't an ending, but a beginning. A mosaic of possibilities I had never imagined, richer and more authentic than what had come before. Sometimes I reflected as I carefully placed another fragment into the evolving pattern. What we throw away creates space for something more valuable to take root and grow. And sometimes, what makes us weep becomes the foundation for unexpected joy. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.